Hey, this is Dr. Franny, and I decided to do an impromptu video regarding my journey with visibility across various social media platforms. It's one of those things where prior to all of this, I had been off the main socials. Instagram was my primary platform for about 3 years. And what was intended to be a short social media break ended up being an extended sabbatical. And part of why that happened was I was in grad school earning my doctorate degree. But more deeply rooted in that was just the feeling of being burnt out and always being subjected to the algorithm. Of course, it was a rough adjustment at first, but what I found was there was a sense of peace and energy I had being off the platform. In many ways, it forced people who I knew in real life to have a richer connection with me because the only way they could reach me was through text message or phone call, or let's actually meet in person. When people wanted to share stuff, they actually sent it through text, which required an extra effort in their part. And so 3 years later, I finally ripped the Band-Aid and decided that I wanted to give Instagram another shot. Now, this didn't come after nowhere. This came after doing a 30 post social media challenge on LinkedIn. LinkedIn, I've had a very interesting relationship with. Started off, I would say, just sitting there because apparently I had the platform since 2009 in college. But then there reached a point where in my career, LinkedIn became a necessity in order to attract donors, to attract volunteers, to showcase all the amazing work I was doing for the nonprofit that I was working with at the time. But then what I realized was LinkedIn very much was attached to an identity with an employer versus it being a platform that I owned myself. So part of this 30-day post challenge, especially because after that point, when I was no longer at the job, I would just post sporadically. I wanted to figure out, what did my authentic voice look like on LinkedIn? And so I committed to 30 days, not necessarily 30 consecutive days, but ultimately it became a 30 post challenge where I felt like I did find my authentic voice. What I appreciated about that space was it allowed me to communicate in a way that I typically enjoy, which is more photos and writing and longer form writing and storytelling. What I found was consistency was really important, but I found that people, for the most part, were fairly responsive to that consistency. I noticed, like, sharp increase in engagement. It's also one of those platforms where what you put in, I feel like, reflects what you get out. So even if we're talking about metrics, for example, halfway through that challenge, I had about 40 new followers. By the end of that 30 post challenge, I had about 100 followers. And so why I say all of this, because this brings me back to the challenge that I'm in right now, which is Instagram, and about halfway through the challenge, and I've reached a point that I'm ready to bow out of this challenge. I'm usually not one who quits things, but I think this is coming from a place of stopping something that does not feel aligned with me before, and recognizing there was a reason why I got off that platform 3 years ago completely. And it's coming up for me, but it's coming up a lot quicker than what I needed to realize. Even if we're just talking raw numbers, during the time that I've been back on this platform, which has been the beginning of February, so just about 2 months, it's just been a net of 26 followers. So while I had 75, this is also a platform where you'll get unfollows really quickly. So about 49 people unfollow. Interestingly, repurposing that same content on YouTube, it ends up being like 14 new followers. So all the signs show that when you are producing content in a fairly consistent base, you will get growth. It may be slow, steady, and consistent. But for me, stopping Instagram has nothing to do with the numbers. It has everything to do with alignment of my values, but more so my energy. So this challenge is teaching me 5 lessons that I just want to put out here for my future self, honestly, to serve as reminders of me whenever I doubt, am I making a right decision? Now, this doesn't mean that I'm not going to be on Instagram at all, ever again, but I think I need to have a really harsh evaluation of what does that look like to be on that platform, and then recognizing or being okay with the fact that that platform is not for me anymore. So the first lesson that I learned is energy is a form of data. Since being on this platform, I have never felt the level of drain that I've experienced over the last few weeks. And it felt like a drain of like literally someone sucking the battery charge out of you. I think part of what is contributing to the drain is that that platform easily can be addictive. It forces me, I end up becoming very hyper focused. And the hyper focus part is coming from a place of always thinking about, what am I going to post next? Is this actually going to hit or land and get the metrics? Which is interesting because when I joined this challenge, I just wanted to show up and not have any expectations. But what I'm recognizing is deep down, you hope what you post contributes outreach and value in a certain way that you get poured back into, whether it's through comments, shares, reposts. So there's a seeking of validation that I found myself seeking as I'm on this platform. So as I mentioned, there is a sense of validation that I recognize that I was seeking, that I guess deep down I didn't want to own up to. I also found my perfectionism that I'm trying to recover from creep up really quickly, where I was just obsessing over the aesthetics, putting in so much effort from the captions to creating the covers. And so even at opportunities when I tell myself there are ways to make this process a lot quicker and don't pour in as much time or use apps to like cut down the time, at the end of the day, it is still work that needs to happen. And so what I found is that the benefits that used to exist on Instagram, which was a feeling of a sense of community, to be in constant conversation with people who I enjoy following, is no longer happening anymore because also the platform has changed. I have found it very annoying that what I continue to see on my platform is either followers that is being suggested to me or ads, but the people who I used to consistently follow, who consistently follow back, I can't even find on my platform unless I'm actively searching for their content or I'm using IG stories. And so as a result, I think I recognize after my initial like, hey, I am back on this platform, and all the welcome that I got, that quickly died down, and that showed dramatically. Like that first post, for example, got nearly 200 likes and 100 plus comments, but then on a consistent basis now my post is getting anywhere between, let's say, 10 and 20 likes and maybe 2 to 5 comments. And while it's not about the numbers, it just comes from a place of, I know I am putting quality content out. I also take a lot of time to put out that content. And so for it to not reciprocate that energy in return, I think that is why I am feeling drained, because honestly, social media does require you to pour energy. You're pouring yourself into that. So that's the first piece. The second lesson is like also just the numbers and the data. With all the data I shared. So for what it's worth in terms of how much time I put in versus what engagement I get in return, it does not pay off. I'm also noticing just on a literal sense of time, for example, my screen time nearly doubled when I got back on this platform. When I checked my last screen time, it mentioned that like 5 hours of the 8 hours that I was on my phone was a result of being on the Instagram platform, which is not okay because I used to have a screen time of less than half. Because when you're not on the platform, what you're doing is you're just experiencing life. You're also finding analog ways to pass your time if you're quote unquote bored, or having conversations with people on the phone. And I'm noticing all of those things are slipping away, and I don't like that. So there is something powerful in the numbers, which then gets into my third lesson of it shifting how I occupy time. So I am noticing the habits, for example, of how much time I spend creating or doom scrolling, where in the past, if I had a day where I felt bored, I might just do an arts and craft project, go read a book, go out and go to a museum. I call them joy appointments. And while some of those things are happening, they are not happening at the same level that they were happening before. And I realized those activities were filling my cup. The fourth lesson is, as much as people tell you, okay, like repurpose the content you're creating, because for me, Instagram is a way for me to amplify my ultimate platform, which is Unlock Block Journeys with Dr. Franny, which right now is living on a blog. While I will say Instagram helped me get over the fear to start posting blogs again, there was a pivotal point where I had to realize, why am I trying to create for the platform that I don't own first versus a platform I do own? So one way what it did and switched was me drafting and publishing blog posts before I posted on Instagram. But I think what it led to was this like wheel of nonstop creating, where I'm like, I need to be cranking out these blog posts quickly so I can then post on a consistent basis, which for me was about 2 times a week. And I felt like it became a hamster wheel so for something that, yes, while I do want to monetize, I also want it to remain a place of joy and passion. That was not happening as much, because once again, I was back into the cycle of feeling like I have to perform for this app. I don't care how much you're repurposing. This is still not considering the fact that you have to literally copy and paste to whatever, if it's a reel or a carousel. It does not consider the amount of time it takes to do a voiceover and make sure your videos are aligned in timing to the voiceover. It does not consider how long it takes to create captions, even if you're using ChatGPT, to make sure that it's like in your voice, or to create covers either on Canva or in CapCut or whatever it is. And so this leads to my fifth lesson of value versus virality, energy poured in versus energy received, and discipline versus performance. When we look at value versus a virality, I am giving so much value, but Instagram does not appreciate the value that I'm giving compared to my blog platform, compared to what I would argue is my audience through my newsletter committee. This is making me realize I need to go back to the community who has believed in me. Within this same time, it forced me to set up my website to be collecting email addresses again for newsletters. And so for the fact that during that time, I've gotten 50 subscribers by not doing much. I've just published 2 blog posts. I haven't reached out to my community. For me to gain email addresses, which is a lot more value than followers on Instagram, shows that people want my content. It is also affirmed when people leave actual comments on my blog. And so where I realize is like, I need to pour energy to people who are pouring into me. And so I don't necessarily need social media to do that. I think what this is making me realize is like, while social media, blogging, newsletters is all about discipline, I was also approaching it from a performance and wanting validation for that performance. And I don't like the idea that I'm seeking validation from external forces versus validation in the work that I'm doing. So I say all this to say, so thinking about what does this mean moving forward? I want to pour into things for platforms that I own. So recognizing the amount of time that I was pouring Instagram, I could have been producing another blog post. I could have been drafting a blog post. I could have been optimizing the blog post. I could have been publishing the blog post. But more importantly, I could have also been making digital products that I can been monetizing, because my ultimate goal is to create the largest archive of Black owned guides that people can purchase and be able to find guides across all 50 states. That is something that is almost like a lifetime passion project, but also business as well. And so I want to get started on recreating those itineraries. I've had itineraries in the past, but I am rebranding, so I have a new aesthetic. I have a new thing in mind in terms of what is contained in these itineraries. So I just want to put those ideas into action. I think the other thing is this is reminding me of I'm being called to start my Unlock Black Journeys, the podcast, which would be an extension of my platform where it's featuring Black voices across all 50 states. It will cover a variety of topics depending on what their area expertise, but it will also cover what is their Black experience in the state that they're coming from, for people to see that the Black experience is not a monolith, even just in one country. And so when I think about that, that is the work I'm excited for, not only for my platform, but to elevate other voices and to be able to be in conversation with other people the same way I'm in conversation with people when I travel. And so in order to be able to do that type of work, to also focus on the education side of my branding, Instagram needs to have a hard halt. And so I'm going to wrap up posting my last couple of reels because I like to end on a sweet note. So I will be ending in exactly the halfway mark of this challenge, and then we'll see what this means. But I know I want to take a hard stop to get off this platform, to connect back to what made me want to enter 2026 as the year of yes, the year of being decisive and seen. And so stay tuned for what's next, but just know that what is next is not going to be rooted in a platform that I own. It's going to be rooted in really building up Unlock Black Journeys, because I know that aligns with my values. I also know that is what God is calling me to do. And so see you later. Support Black, period.